I remember the first day like it was yesterday, though in truth it feels like a lifetime ago. The morning news had barely mentioned anything unusual, an outbreak in a small town upstate, but by afternoon the panic had spilled into the streets of New York City. People were running, screaming, grabbing groceries, fighting over bottled water and canned food. Observation told me this was no ordinary disaster. Logic whispered that survival depended on immediate action, not panic. I locked my apartment door behind me, checked my preps. Water, canned goods, batteries, and, of course, Diesel and Luna. My dog sniffed anxiously at the door, my cat hissed at the window. They had no idea what was coming, but I did. The city had turned into chaos. From my window, I could see smoke rising from several blocks over. Groans and shouts mingled with the wail of sirens. By evening, the first reports of infected attacks hit social media. People were calling them zombies. Their eyes were vacant, their movements jerky, relentless. Observation told me the term didn't matter. Logic dictated that proximity equaled danger. Those who didn't retreat fast enough were gone, or worse, became one of them. I barricaded the doors, reinforced the windows, and set up observation points. Every movement outside was catalogued. Screaming humans, shambling infected, police vehicles moving in erratic patterns. Logic dictated patience. Panic would be fatal. Diesel lay at my feet, ears perked, growling at every shadow. Luna stayed close to the window, tail twitching nervously. Observation wasn't just about humans and zombies, it was about everything in the environment. Broken glass, overturned cars, empty streets that were suddenly dangerous paths. By nightfall, the city was unrecognizable. Fires burned in multiple locations, and distant gunshots punctuated the groans of the undead. Observation and logic had guided my preparation, but the emotional weight of seeing your city fall apart was crushing. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to breathe, to think, to plan. Survival was more than instinct. It was observation, logic, and calculated action. That night, I whispered to Diesel and Luna, "We'll get through this. We have to. Every choice counts." And for the first time, I understood what it truly meant to prepare, not just for disaster but for the collapse of the world as I knew it. The morning after the city fell into chaos, I knew venturing outside was inevitable. Supplies wouldn't last forever, and observation alone couldn't feed us. Diesel and Luna were restless, sensing the tension. Logic dictated preparation before leaving. Weapons checked, backpack loaded with essentials, food, water, first aid, and a flashlight. Every step had to be calculated. Survival demanded precision. I stepped into the hallway cautiously. The building was eerily silent, broken glass scattered on the floor, faint groans echoing from the street below. Observation told me the zombies were slow but relentless. One misstep could mean death. Logic dictated moving only in shadows, using obstacles for cover. On the street, panic had transformed into something worse. Groups of people ran blindly through the chaos, some attacking others for supplies. I observed carefully from behind a burned-out car, cataloging their behavior. Desperation made humans as dangerous as the undead. I couldn't afford mistakes. Every choice counted. A groan drew my attention. An infected staggered toward the intersection, arms outstretched, eyes vacant. Observation. Slow but steady approach, distracted by noise. Logic dictated I could bypass it if I remained calm and quiet. Diesel growled low, alerting me to another moving shadow, a human scavenger, armed, uncertain, desperate. One wrong move from either side and it could turn violent. I moved through back alleys, staying in shadows, careful to avoid confrontation. Observation revealed patterns. Infected avoided obstacles, humans moved chaotically but predictable if watched. Logic dictated using this knowledge to minimize risk while collecting supplies. By afternoon, I reached a small convenience store. Broken windows, scattered cans, and overturned shelves told the story of previous scavengers. Observation guided my path, avoiding exposed areas, checking corners before entering. Logic dictated speed, efficiency, and awareness. Grab what we need, nothing more, and retreat safely. Inside, I found a few canned goods, bottled water, and some basic medical supplies. As I turned to leave, a shadow moved near the entrance. another survivor, clearly desperate, clutching a makeshift weapon. Observation, fear, hesitation, unpredictability. Logic dictated diplomacy first, aggression only if necessary. Easy, I said calmly, hands raised. I'm not here to fight. Just taking supplies and leaving. The human nodded, tense, retreating slowly. Observation confirmed compliance. Logic dictated patience until the threat passed. Survival wasn't just about fighting, it was about reading behavior and making the right choice at the right time. By sunset, I returned to the apartment, supplies in hand, Diesel and Luna alert but unharmed. Observation, patience, and logic had preserved us again. The city outside was chaotic, dangerous, and unpredictable, but each successful run reinforced one truth. Survival required constant awareness, careful calculation, and discipline. That night, as I barricaded the doors again, I whispered to Diesel, "We survived today. Tomorrow we'll do it again. Observation and logic will keep us alive." For the first time, I realized survival was no longer a choice. It was a relentless responsibility, every second, every step, every decision. By the third day, the city had almost completely fallen silent. Sirens had faded into distant echoes, broken only by occasional gunshots or the moans of the infected. Diesel and Luna followed me closely as I reinforced the apartment. Observation had taught me that static defenses were just as important as movement outside. Logic dictated double-bolted doors, nailed-shut windows, and cleared lines of sight. Every weak point had to be accounted for. I set up observation points by the windows, a vantage to watch the street below without exposing myself. Diesel would patrol the hallway, ears alert, growling at every sound, while Luna surveyed from high shelves, tail twitching, ready to alert me to any movement. Observation wasn't just about humans or zombies, it was about noticing subtle changes in environment. A broken branch, a displaced trash can, or a new shadow that could signal danger. Rationing became my next priority. Cans of food, bottled water, and spare batteries were carefully cataloged. Logic dictated strict allocation. 1 meal per person per day, water measured to the exact ounce. Survival wasn't just endurance, it was calculated resource management. Isolation, however, came with another challenge: the mind. Observation revealed creeping anxiety, the subtle tension in every movement, every sound, every groan in the distance. Logic dictated routines to preserve mental stability. Timed walks through the apartment, mental exercises, and constant cataloging of supplies. Diesel and Luna became more than companions. They were anchors, constant reminders of life amidst chaos. Occasionally, noises from outside drew our attention. Observation confirmed either scavengers or displaced infected, moving unpredictably through empty streets. Logic dictated waiting, observing, and letting them pass before acting. One wrong decision could mean infection or death. As days turned into a week, I began to map the city in my mind. Observation and logic combined. Which streets were flooded, which areas had clusters of infected, and which buildings might hold supplies. Survival wasn't random, it was strategy. Every decision, every movement was a calculated step toward enduring this new world. At night, I sat with Diesel at my side, Luna curled atop a shelf. Observation guided my reflections. I had survived the initial chaos, secured some supplies, and maintained vigilance, but isolation was a new threat. Logic dictated that preparation, observation, and mental discipline were as important as barricades and weapons. I whispered the mantra aloud, letting it settle in the small apartment. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Isolation wasn't merely a state of being, it was a test. Observation and logic were my lifelines, Diesel and Luna my constant companions, and discipline the tool that would allow me to survive the first year of a world gone mad. After a week of isolation, supplies were dwindling. Observation had shown that waiting too long meant risking starvation, but venturing outside carried extreme danger. Logic dictated preparation. Backpack stocked with food, water, medical kits, flashlight, and my rifle. Diesel and Luna would accompany me, their instincts invaluable in the chaos outside. I stepped into the hallway cautiously. Broken glass, overturned furniture, and faint splashes of blood marked the city's rapid descent into chaos. Observation revealed the movement patterns of the infected. Slow but relentless, drawn to noise and activity. Logic dictated using cover, moving through shadows, and minimizing any sudden movements. Survival demanded patience and attention. The first street was littered with abandoned cars, some overturned. Groans echoed faintly from alleys, and distant screams reminded me humans could be just as dangerous as the undead. Observation told me where to step, which routes were safe, and which areas to avoid. Logic dictated efficiency. Move fast, gather supplies, and retreat before exposure increased. At a nearby corner store, I spotted movement inside. Scavengers, desperate humans armed with makeshift weapons. Observation revealed their fear, hesitation, and disorganization. Logic dictated a low-profile approach. Any confrontation could escalate quickly. I waited, watching, noting their positions, and calculating the safest path to enter without alerting them. Inside, I found canned goods, bottled water, and a small first aid kit. As I reached for the last few cans, one scavenger glanced toward me, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Observation told me he was more likely to flee than attack, but logic dictated caution. I kept my hands visible and moved slowly, signaling non-aggression. Diesel growled low, Luna hissed from the shadows, both reinforcing the tension without provoking violence. The scavenger fled, and I completed the scavenging run quickly, retracing my steps through side streets to avoid exposed areas. Observation guided every movement. Logic dictated speed and stealth. One misstep could have led to death or infection. By the time I returned to the apartment, dusk had fallen. Supplies were secured, barricades reinforced, and Diesel and Luna finally rested. Observation and logic had preserved us again, but the weight of human unpredictability pressed heavily on my mind. I realized that survival wasn't just about avoiding infected. It was about anticipating human desperation. Every scavenger, every interaction, every choice carried consequences. Observation, logic, and discipline were not optional. They were the only things standing between life and death. That night, as I reviewed supplies and reinforced barricades, I whispered the mantra aloud, steadying my mind. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Scavenging risks were more than physical. They were tests of observation, strategy, and moral judgment. Each successful run strengthened survival skills, but each encounter reminded me how fragile life had become in this new world. The apartment had kept us alive, but observation and logic told me it wasn't a long-term solution. Supplies were limited, space was tight, and the streets below remained unpredictable. We needed a stronger, more defensible location. After scouting from the rooftop, I identified an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the neighborhood. Large, reinforced, and isolated, it had potential, but reaching it would be risky. Preparation became paramount. Observation guided every detail. The street patterns, areas where infected gathered, and routes scavengers might take. Logic dictated the safest path. Shadows, debris for cover, and timing movements between patrols of the undead. Diesel and Luna sensed the tension. They stayed close, alert to every sound. The journey was tense. Groans echoed from alleyways, shadows moved in broken streets, and occasional gunfire reminded me that humans were as dangerous as zombies. Observation dictated patience. Logic dictated precision. Every step, every pause, every glance counted. When we reached the warehouse, the scale of the building impressed me. Observation revealed multiple entry points, potential weak spots, and high vantage areas perfect for surveillance. Logic dictated prioritizing entry through a side door hidden by debris. Inside, the space was vast but littered with abandoned supplies and hazards. Broken shelves, shattered glass, and weak flooring required careful navigation. The first task, securing the perimeter. Observation guided placement of barricades, reinforcing weak doors and clearing sightlines. Logic dictated creating choke points, narrow pathways that allowed us to control any intruders or infected that might breach the building. Diesel patrolled hallways while Luna took high shelves, both acting as early warning systems. Next came organization. Supplies scavenged over the past weeks were sorted. Food, water, medical kits, and ammunition. Observation dictated prioritizing access to essentials and creating safe zones. Logic dictated rationing. Every bottle of water, every bullet accounted for. Survival demanded meticulous planning. The first night in the warehouse was tense. Observation revealed faint noises outside, perhaps scavengers or displaced infected. Logic dictated calm vigilance. I stayed near a high vantage window, Diesel at my side, Luna watching silently from above. Every shadow could mean danger. Isolation had taught me patience. The warehouse taught me strategy. Observation, logic, and planning transformed the building from an abandoned shell into a defensible shelter. Every action, from barricades to supply management, was deliberate, calculated, and critical. Survival wasn't just reacting, it was anticipating. Before sleep, I whispered to Diesel and Luna as I always did. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. For the first time since the outbreak, I felt a glimmer of security, not safety, not peace, but the confidence that we could endure longer than before. The warehouse wasn't just a shelter. It was a base for strategy, observation, and survival in a world where every second could be the difference between life and death. Weeks in the warehouse brought relative stability, but observation and logic reminded me that stability was fragile. The streets outside were unpredictable, and the undead never rested. One evening, I ventured out with Diesel and Luna to scavenge essential supplies. Medical kits, canned food, and batteries. Observation guided every movement. Logic dictated patience, calculation, and vigilance. We reached a small pharmacy nearby. Broken windows and overturned shelves told stories of chaos, looting, and desperation. Observation revealed a lone survivor inside, frantically grabbing supplies. I stepped quietly, rifle raised but voice calm. "I don't want trouble," I said. The human froze, eyes wide with fear. Observation told me he was more scared than aggressive. Logic dictated careful communication. Just leave me alone," he stammered, backing into a corner. Diesel growled low, alerting both of us to the tension. The human panicked, knocking over a shelf. Groans erupted from the shadows, infected drawn by the noise. Observation revealed multiple infected converging from broken entrances. Logic dictated immediate action, retreat or risk being overrun. I grabbed a small medical kit, signaling Diesel and Luna to stay close. We ran, dodging groaning figures. Behind us, the human screamed, terrified, and charged at the nearest exit. A shadow surged from the debris, a partially collapsed ceiling, and the man was struck, pinned beneath a fallen beam. Observation told me it was too late. Logic dictated leaving immediately. Any hesitation could cost more lives. We escaped, hearts pounding, Diesel shaking off mud and Luna arching her back, alert to every sound. Observation confirmed no immediate pursuit, but the loss weighed heavily. For the first time, I felt the full emotional cost of survival. Human life was fragile, and every decision carried consequences. Back at the warehouse, I reinforced barricades and sorted supplies. Observation revealed tension among us: fatigue, anxiety, and grief. Logic dictated acknowledgement without letting despair compromise survival. Diesel rested his head on my knee. Luna perched silently, sensing the gravity of the day. That night, as I sat alone, I whispered the mantra aloud. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The first loss was a harsh lesson. Survival required calculation, observation, and discipline, but it could not shield you from tragedy. Every choice mattered, not just in preserving life, but in navigating the moral weight of decisions made under relentless pressure. And for the first time, I understood that surviving this world meant living with the consequences of every action, every observation, and every decision, no matter how painful. The warehouse gave us a defensible base, but observation and logic told me we couldn't stay passive forever. Supplies were finite, and the streets surrounding the building were crawling with both infected and desperate humans. Survival demanded proactive measures. clearing nearby areas, identifying safe routes, and securing resources. I mapped the streets from the rooftop, noting clusters of infected, potential scavenger paths, and abandoned stores that might hold supplies. Observation revealed patterns in movement. The undead were slow but relentless, humans frantic and unpredictable. Logic dictated small, calculated excursions rather than risky full-scale sweeps. Diesel and Luna, ever alert, would act as early warning systems. Our first operation targeted a small convenience store a few blocks away. Observation told me which streets were least traveled, where shadows could provide cover, and how to anticipate movement from both humans and zombies. Logic dictated stealth, speed, and efficiency. Grab what we needed and return without drawing attention. We moved silently through broken streets. Groans echoed from alleys, distant screams punctuated the night. Every step required vigilance. Every corner could hide danger. Diesel's growl alerted me to movement behind a burnt-out car. Two infected shuffled blindly, missing us entirely. Observation and logic allowed us to slip past unnoticed. Inside the store we found canned food, bottled water, and a small cache of medical supplies. Observation revealed signs of previous human scavengers. Discarded wrappers, broken shelves, and scuffed floors. Logic dictated we act quickly and carefully, taking only what we needed to maintain stealth. On our way back, we encountered a small group of humans scavenging nearby. Observation revealed fear and hesitation in their eyes. They weren't aggressive yet. Logic dictated non-confrontation. A brief, calm warning shot into a nearby wall scattered them without a direct fight. Diesel and Luna flanked, keeping us safe while maintaining control. Back at the warehouse, we stored the new supplies and reinforced barricades along the routes we had cleared. Observation revealed that the surrounding streets were now safer, but not safe. Logic dictated continued vigilance. Rotating patrols, mapped escape routes, and careful rationing of supplies. That night, as I sat on the rooftop watching the streets below, I reflected on the lessons of the day. Observation had guided every decision, logic had preserved life, and discipline had kept us cohesive. The city remained dangerous, unpredictable, and hostile, but by reclaiming just a few streets we had gained control, however temporary. I whispered the mantra to Diesel and Luna once more. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Reclaiming the streets was more than physical, it was psychological. Control over territory brought confidence, but also responsibility. Every choice in this new world carried consequences. Survival demanded vigilance, strategy, and emotional endurance in equal measure. With a few streets reclaimed, I knew short scavenging runs weren't enough. Observation and logic told me that for long-term survival, we needed established supply lines, routes we could rely on repeatedly. Diesel and Luna would remain essential for early warning, and I would plan every step meticulously. I mapped several targets: a small hardware store for tools and barricade materials, a grocery market for food, and a pharmacy for medical supplies. Observation revealed patterns. Clusters of infected avoided wide-open streets. Humans moved erratically but predictably when cornered or desperate. Logic dictated timing excursions during low-traffic hours and always having a clear escape route. Our first extended run began at dawn. Streets were quiet, fog rolling over abandoned cars and debris. Every sound, groan, clatter, distant scream, was noted and analyzed. Observation dictated movement through shadowed alleys. Logic dictated minimizing exposure, keeping back to walls, and avoiding intersections. At the hardware store, we were met with signs of previous looting. Shelves overturned, broken glass, and scattered tools. Observation revealed some remaining supplies: hammers, nails, duct tape, and long wooden planks. Logic dictated careful selection. Only what was essential for barricades and repairs, avoiding unnecessary noise. On the way to the grocery market, we encountered another human scavenger group. Observation told me they were desperate but unarmed. Logic dictated diplomacy first. I raised my hands, signaling non-aggression, and they hesitated, then retreated silently. Survival depended not on confrontation, but on reading intentions and controlling the encounter. The market was partially flooded from a broken water main. Observation revealed infected wading through the shallow water. Logic dictated rerouting our path, moving carefully along debris and abandoned vehicles, using noise to divert their attention. Diesel's low growl and Luna's hiss guided me through areas of hidden danger. By dusk, we returned to the warehouse, supplies in hand. Observation confirmed no immediate threats, but the journey had highlighted weaknesses. Some routes were too exposed, others unpredictable. Logic dictated refining paths, marking safer shortcuts, and rotating scavenging teams to avoid overexposure. That night, as we cataloged our supplies, I realized the importance of routines. Observation, strategy, and disciplined movement could turn chaotic streets into controlled supply lines. Each trip reinforced a simple truth. Survival was a combination of foresight, patience, and calculated action. I whispered the mantra to Diesel and Luna once more. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Supply lines weren't just about food or water. They were about control, knowledge, and minimizing risk in an unpredictable world. Observation and logic had kept us alive this far, and they would continue to guide every step forward. By now, I understood one crucial truth. Humans were often more dangerous than the infected. Desperation bred aggression, and observation revealed that fear could turn ordinary people into killers. Logic dictated preparation, caution, and strategic thinking whenever encountering another survivor. We had reclaimed a few streets and established supply lines, but news of a hostile scavenger group had reached my ears, an organized band preying on smaller survivor groups. Observation told me their patterns. They struck at dawn or dusk, preferred ambushes in narrow alleys, and moved swiftly, retreating if confronted with resistance. Logic dictated avoiding direct conflict unless necessary, and planning defensive contingencies. The encounter happened unexpectedly during a supply run. A small group of 3 armed humans blocked a street, their faces masked, weapons raised. Observation revealed hesitation. They were testing me, unsure if I would flee or fight. Logic dictated a calm approach. Raise my hands, speak clearly, and control the interaction. Easy, I said, voice steady. I don't want trouble. Just passing through. Diesel growled low, Luna hissed silently from a high ledge. Observation told me to maintain composure. Any sudden movement could trigger violence. One of them advanced slightly, weapon ready. Observation revealed tension, fear, and hesitation. They were opportunists, not killers yet. Logic dictated bluffing strength without aggression. I lifted my rifle casually, not aiming directly, and positioned myself with Diesel and Luna visible for intimidation. After a tense moment, the group backed away, muttering curses, and disappeared down a side alley. Observation confirmed they weren't pursuing. Logic dictated retreat along a pre-planned route, avoiding exposure to potential traps or additional hostiles. Survival depended on anticipation, control, and maintaining a psychological edge. Back at the warehouse, I reviewed the encounter. Observation revealed key lessons. Human threats were unpredictable, but their behavior could be read and influenced with calm confidence and clear signals. Logic dictated adjustments to our routines, varying routes, reinforcing barricades, and monitoring potential ambush points. That night, I reflected on the balance of fear and strategy. Humans and infected both threatened survival, but only observation and logic could turn chaos into controlled action. Diesel and Luna rested close by, vigilant as ever. I whispered the mantra aloud. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Human threats were constant, fluid, and dangerous, but with awareness, patience, and calculated responses, survival remained possible. Observation and logic weren't just tools, they were shields, guiding every decision in a world where every second could mean life or death. The first chill of winter settled over the city. Observation told me that cold was just as deadly as infected or humans. Frosted streets slowed movement, exposed water turned to ice, and supplies dwindled faster. Logic dictated preparation. Reinforce shelter, ration food, and keep everyone, human and animal, warm. Diesel's thick coat and Luna's fur were advantages, but I made sure blankets, insulated clothing, and firewood were stockpiled. Observation guided me in layering defenses. Windows sealed, doors double-bolted, and safe zones near heat sources created. Logic dictated strict routines to conserve energy and prevent exposure. Survival now meant managing not just threats from outside but threats from the environment itself. Scavenging became riskier. Ice made streets slippery, hiding hazards and slowing our retreat. Observation revealed that infected moved slower in the cold, but humans adapted quickly, desperate to find food and shelter. Logic dictated planning shorter, more efficient supply runs, timing them for daylight when visibility was best. One evening, a group of scavengers cornered us near a half-collapsed grocery store. Observation revealed they were desperate, hungry, and willing to fight. Logic dictated strategy over brute force. I created a diversion with a small fire in a distant alley, drawing them away while Diesel and Luna kept watch. The maneuver worked, human threats scattered, and we returned to the warehouse unharmed. Inside the warehouse, I monitored morale. Observation showed subtle signs of stress, restlessness, irritability, and fatigue. Logic dictated structured routines, patrols, supply cataloging, and quiet reflection to maintain mental resilience. Diesel and Luna were anchors, offering comfort and alertness that I couldn't provide alone. Winter pressed harder each day. Observation revealed frozen water pipes, icy rooftops, and dwindling natural resources. Logic dictated creating contingency plans, melting snow for water, rationing food strictly, and identifying nearby abandoned buildings for emergency shelter. Survival was no longer about simple movement, it was about foresight and preparation. That night, as frost crept along the warehouse floors, I whispered the mantra aloud, steadying my mind. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Winter was relentless, testing endurance, patience, and strategy. Observation and logic were more crucial than ever. Survival demanded not just vigilance against infected or humans, but against nature itself, and the knowledge that every decision, no matter how small, could mean the difference between life and death. As winter deepened, observation revealed a strategic necessity, controlling the bridge that connected our sector of the city to the rest of the flooded streets. It wasn't just a path, it was a lifeline for supplies, a barrier against human and infected threats, and a vantage point for monitoring movement. Logic dictated that securing it could mean the difference between survival and being cut off completely. Diesel and Luna sensed the tension in the air as we approached. Observation guided every step. Broken cars provided cover, debris masked our movement, and shadows offered concealment. Logic dictated careful timing, waiting for distant infected to pass before advancing. Every second counted. The bridge itself was partially collapsed. Observation revealed weak sections, water rushing below, and gaps where debris had fallen. Logic dictated moving only on reinforced parts and setting temporary barriers for safety. I placed small markers to track structural hazards, ensuring that every step minimized risk. Our first encounter came unexpectedly, a pair of humans scavenging supplies along the bridge. Observation told me they were armed but hesitant, likely weighing whether to attack or flee. Logic dictated a display of controlled dominance. Rifle raised, voice calm, Diesel growling. The humans froze, then retreated cautiously, allowing us to continue. Survival depended on intimidation without unnecessary violence. Once across, we fortified the bridge with barricades scavenged from nearby streets. Observation guided placement. Choke points where any approaching threat could be monitored, higher ground for surveillance, and fallback zones in case of an attack. Logic dictated redundancy, multiple layers of defense to compensate for unknown variables. By nightfall, the bridge was secured, and our presence controlled access to the northern streets. Observation revealed fewer wandering infected, clearer supply routes, and greater control over potential human threats. Logic dictated rotation of patrols, maintenance of barricades, and careful monitoring of all activity. Diesel and Luna remained alert, their senses complementing mine. Sitting on the bridge's edge, watching the cold water flow beneath, I reflected on the lessons so far. Observation, logic, and preparation had allowed survival through chaos, loss, and human unpredictability. Controlling this bridge wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Every step, every barricade, every calculated decision reinforced the truth. Survival required constant vigilance, discipline, and foresight. I whispered the mantra aloud, letting it echo softly over the icy water. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The bridge wasn't merely a crossing. It was control, observation, and preparation manifested in concrete and steel. Holding it gave us an edge, but also reminded me that every advantage in this world came with risk, responsibility, and the need for constant calculation. While scouting for additional supply caches near the bridge, observation revealed an unusual structure partially hidden under overgrown ivy and rubble. An old service entrance to a government bunker. Logic told me it could contain valuable resources, food, medical supplies, or tools, but also unknown dangers. Diesel and Luna stayed close, ears alert, ready to respond to threats I couldn't yet see. The entrance was narrow, partially collapsed. Observation revealed weakened supports and debris that could fall if disturbed. Logic dictated cautious entry. Slow movements, testing every step and keeping escape routes clear. A single misstep could trap us, or worse. Inside, darkness enveloped us. The air was damp and smelled of mold, but observation revealed shelves still stocked with non-perishable food, first aid kits, and containers labeled emergency rations. Logic dictated careful cataloging. Remove only essentials we could carry safely, leaving space for future runs. Diesel sniffed along the walls, alerting me to a faint noise, likely a small group of displaced infected drawn by our entry. Observation guided silent navigation, avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Further inside, I discovered a small, secure room with bunk beds and old tools. Observation revealed it had been abandoned hastily, leaving potential for a temporary secondary shelter. Logic dictated reinforcing the doors and marking entry points. This bunker could serve as a fallback location if the warehouse became compromised. The most valuable discovery, however, was a set of crates filled with medical supplies, antibiotics, bandages, and painkillers. Observation told me these were long-lasting and could be rationed over months. Logic dictated careful inventory, ensuring maximum efficiency for survival. Every item accounted for, every resource preserved meant more time and safety. As we left the bunker, I reflected on the lesson it offered. Observation and logic could turn hidden dangers into advantages. Most survivors overlooked potential resources due to fear or haste, but careful study and calculated risk could yield significant benefits. Diesel and Luna walked silently beside me, their instincts guiding us safely back to the bridge and warehouse. That night, I sat near the fire with supplies laid out, whispering the mantra. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The hidden bunker wasn't just a stockpile, it was a lesson. In a world overrun by infected and human threats, survival depended on recognizing opportunity, assessing risk, and executing plans with discipline and foresight. Every choice could save lives, or cost them. A heavy storm hit the city, turning streets into rivers and flooding areas we had previously reclaimed. Observation revealed a new set of dangers. Waterlogged streets hid debris, open manholes, and lurking infected swept along by currents. Logic dictated caution. Every step required awareness and precise calculation. Diesel and Luna stayed close, their instincts alerting me to hidden threats. Supply runs became perilous. Observation showed that both humans and infected had adapted to the new environment. Some survivors were building makeshift rafts, while infected floated or staggered through waist-deep water. Logic dictated planning routes along partially elevated streets, using abandoned vehicles and debris for cover. At one flooded intersection, we spotted a human scavenger trapped on a small mound of debris, surrounded by both water and infected. Observation revealed panic in their movements. Logic dictated an indirect approach. I created a distraction by tossing a small object to draw the infected away, then guided the survivor to higher ground. Diesel barked low to maintain control, while Luna remained hidden, ready to alert me to any unexpected movement. The journey back was slow and deliberate. Observation guided me past submerged hazards, including broken glass, fallen street signs, and unstable floors. Logic dictated constant assessment. Was it safer to wade through or risk climbing higher structures? Every choice carried consequences. One misstep could mean infection or injury. By nightfall, we returned to the warehouse, exhausted but uninjured. Observation confirmed the storm had reshaped the city's landscape, creating new challenges for both survival and navigation. Logic dictated updating maps, marking safe routes, and reconsidering our strategy for future trips. That night, as I secured the warehouse, I reflected on the lessons of the day. Observation and logic were more critical than ever. Nature itself had become a threat alongside humans and infected. Diesel and Luna curled at my feet, silent reminders that vigilance and preparation were essential in a world where every element could turn deadly. I whispered the mantra, steadying my mind despite the chaos outside. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Flooded streets were a harsh reminder. Survival depended not just on courage or strength, but on observation, foresight, and calculated action. In a world of constant change, the ability to adapt quickly and logically could mean the difference between life and death. Night fell over the warehouse, thick fog rolling through the streets, masking movement and amplifying every sound. Observation told me danger was near. Groans, shuffling footsteps, and distant screams echoed through the cold air. Logic dictated immediate precautions. Reinforce barricades, check weapons, and assign patrols. Diesel and Luna were on alert, ears twitching, bodies tense. The first signs came as faint pounding at the side entrance. Observation revealed multiple intruders, both human scavengers and displaced infected, drawn by noise and scent. Logic dictated a layered defense. Choke points at the doors, firing positions at windows, and escape paths in case the outer barricades were breached. The attack began suddenly. Groans mixed with shouts as scavengers tried to force the doors. Observation guided every action. Identify weak points, anticipate movement, and use the environment to our advantage. Logic dictated restraint. Only fire when necessary, conserve ammunition, and use traps where possible. Diesel lunged at the nearest threat, growling, while Luna hissed from above, distracting and disorienting intruders. One scavenger tried to climb over a side barricade. Observation revealed his hesitation and imbalance. Logic dictated exploiting it. I shouted, aimed near him, and forced him back into retreat. The infected, confused by noise and light, wandered aimlessly into our traps, giving us control over the engagement. Inside, survivors coordinated quietly under my direction. Observation revealed fatigue and fear, but logic dictated calm leadership. Hold your positions, I whispered. Watch your corners. Every second counts. The sound of splintering wood and groaning filled the air, but methodical defense prevented any breach. By dawn, the attackers had retreated. Observation confirmed no lingering threats nearby. Logic dictated immediate repairs, checking supplies, and tending to minor injuries. Diesel and Luna lay exhausted but alert, their vigilance saving us from potential disaster. The siege left its mark: torn barricades, scattered supplies, and heightened tension. Observation revealed that future attacks would likely escalate if we remained static. Logic dictated preparation, reinforcing defenses, diversifying escape routes, and mapping alternative supply lines. That morning, as the fog lifted over the ruined streets, I whispered the mantra to steady my mind. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The night siege was a harsh reminder. Survival wasn't just about endurance. It required strategy, foresight, and leadership under pressure. Observation and logic weren't optional. They were the difference between life and death. And every choice mattered, especially when the stakes were this high. Winter had tightened its grip on the city. Ice-coated streets and rooftops, snow drifted into alleyways, and supplies were dangerously low. Observation revealed frozen water sources, weakened structures, and clusters of both infected and desperate humans forced into tighter spaces. Logic dictated preparation. Fortify the warehouse, ration every resource, and monitor weather patterns closely. The cold was relentless. Diesel's paws were frozen from patrols. Luna shivered despite her thick fur. I bundled them with makeshift blankets while monitoring barricades and supply caches. Observation told me that environmental hazards were as lethal as the undead. Slips, falls, hypothermia, and frostbite threatened survival as much as infection. Logic dictated minimizing exposure and keeping all movement purposeful. Scavenging trips became short, highly calculated operations. Observation revealed that snow muffled footsteps but also concealed dangers: open manholes, thin ice, and debris under snowdrifts. Logic dictated mapping safe routes, avoiding high-risk areas, and moving only when daylight provided maximum visibility. Diesel and Luna's instincts were invaluable, alerting me to hidden threats long before I could see them. One night, a sudden blizzard trapped a group of infected near the warehouse perimeter. Observation told me their movement was slowed, unpredictable, and easily manipulated. Logic dictated creating diversions, using noise and light to steer them away from barricades while maintaining our defensive advantage. Diesel barked, Luna hissed, and together we guided the threat without direct confrontation. Inside, tensions ran high. Observation revealed subtle signs of despair among survivors: restlessness, irritability, and fear. Logic dictated structured routines, rotating patrols, scheduled meals, and quiet reflection to preserve mental resilience. Discipline became as important as warmth or weapons. By the end of the siege, supplies were stretched, but no lives were lost. Observation and logic had guided every decision: when to move, where to position defenses, and how to maintain morale under extreme conditions. Survival was no longer simply enduring danger. It was mastering it through calculated, disciplined action. That night, I whispered the mantra aloud, letting it resonate through the cold, empty warehouse. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Winter Siege was a brutal teacher. Every movement outside, every rationed meal, every calculated decision mattered. Observation, logic, and discipline weren't just strategies, they were lifelines. And in a world that seemed to grow more hostile with each passing day, they were the only things keeping us alive. By midwinter, supplies were critical. Observation and logic dictated that longer, riskier runs were necessary. Diesel and Luna were alert as always, sensing tension in the streets. I had planned a route through abandoned warehouses and narrow alleys to reach a cache of preserved food and medical supplies. But the city was no longer just infested with infected. It was crawling with desperate humans. Halfway to the target, movement caught my eye. Observation revealed a group of 5 humans hiding behind overturned cars, weapons drawn. Logic dictated instant reassessment. An ambush. Their position was ideal for surprise, and hesitation could be fatal. I ducked behind a concrete barrier, signaling Diesel and Luna to stay close. Every instinct and calculation now mattered. The humans made the first move, advancing cautiously. Observation told me their fear was high. They were inexperienced but desperate. Logic dictated using environmental advantage, debris, shadows, and narrow spaces to control the engagement. A well-placed shot into the pavement near their feet startled them, forcing them to freeze and retreat momentarily. We maneuvered silently through the alley, using misdirection and observation to evade direct confrontation. Diesel barked low to draw attention to a false route, while Luna hissed from above, forcing one intruder to halt. Logic dictated patience and precision. Confrontation would only be a last resort. By carefully exploiting the terrain, we reached the supply cache. Observation revealed the humans were still nearby, searching, frustrated. Logic dictated minimal noise, fast collection, and a planned exit route that looped around the ambushers. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. On the way back, one of the scavengers attempted to flank us. Observation allowed me to anticipate the move. A precise, non-lethal warning shot and a firm verbal command drove him back without triggering full-scale conflict. Logic dictated avoiding unnecessary aggression. survival relied on evasion and control, not confrontation. Back at the warehouse, supplies secured, I reinforced barricades and updated maps. Observation revealed new patterns in human movement, informing future routes. Diesel and Luna rested nearby, their alertness and instincts having kept us safe once again. That night, I whispered the mantra, steadying my mind after the tension of the ambush. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The ambush was a harsh reminder. Survival wasn't just avoiding the undead or the cold, it was navigating human unpredictability, exploiting observation, and applying logic in real time. Every decision, every maneuver, every second could mean the difference between life and death. The warehouse shelves were thinning. Observation and logic told me it was time for a high-stakes supply raid. The target, a small military outpost on the outskirts of the city, rumored to contain ammunition, medical supplies, and preserved food. Diesel and Luna sensed the tension. Their instincts were as critical as my planning. I mapped the route carefully. Observation revealed patrol patterns of both infected and humans scavenging nearby. Logic dictated moving during daylight for visibility, but using shadowed alleys and debris for cover. Every movement was calculated, every second mattered. The approach was tense. Observation revealed a cluster of infected near the perimeter. Logic dictated creating a distraction, a thrown object to divert attention, giving us a clear path. Diesel growled low, ready to respond, while Luna perched silently, alert to any subtle shift in movement. Inside the outpost, supplies were abundant, but observation warned me, previous scavengers had left traps. Logic dictated thorough inspection before handling anything. Tripwires, broken glass, and unstable flooring were carefully navigated. Every action was deliberate, measured, and mindful of risk. Suddenly, a noise outside signaled human presence. Desperate scavengers who had noticed our entry. Observation told me they were unorganized, hesitant, but still dangerous. Logic dictated quick decisions. Grab essential supplies, avoid confrontation, and retreat using an alternative route I had identified during planning. Diesel barked sharply, signaling a brief distraction, while Luna's hiss drew attention upward. The strategy worked. We evaded them without engagement. Exiting the outpost, I moved swiftly through mapped alleys, avoiding clusters of infected and blocked streets. Observation allowed me to anticipate potential ambush points. Logic dictated speed, but caution. The smallest mistake could mean injury or infection. Back at the warehouse, supplies secured, I cataloged the new resources. Observation revealed lessons from the raid. Preparation, foresight, and calculated risk could turn dangerous situations into survival opportunities. Diesel and Luna rested, ever vigilant as I reinforced barricades and updated maps. That night, I whispered the mantra, letting it resonate. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The supply raid had been perilous, but observation and logic had guided every step. Survival in this world wasn't about luck. It was about anticipation, planning, and execution. Every mission, every decision, every second could be the difference between life and death. Weeks of careful survival had taught me one harsh truth. Humans were often the greatest threat. Observation and logic had kept us alive so far, but trust was fragile in a world overrun by fear and desperation. One evening, a new survivor arrived at the warehouse. Friendly, seemingly desperate, but observably cautious. Logic dictated a trial of patience. Allow access but monitor closely. Days passed and the survivor integrated cautiously. Observation revealed small inconsistencies. Supplies disappearing, subtle lies about previous scavenging routes, unusual nighttime movements. Logic dictated restraint, not confrontation yet, but discreet monitoring and preparedness for betrayal. Diesel and Luna were alert, sensing unease even before I consciously noticed it. The betrayal came suddenly. In the dead of night, I awoke to noises near the supply room, shuffling, whispered commands, and the faint glint of a weapon. Observation confirmed the intruder, the friendly survivor, attempting to steal ammunition and food. Logic dictated immediate action. Secure the warehouse perimeter, alert Diesel and Luna, and control the intruder without escalating to lethal violence unless necessary. I confronted them quietly, voice calm but firm. Stop. Hands where I can see them. Observation revealed hesitation and fear. They were inexperienced but desperate. Logic dictated a calculated display of strength. Rifle raised, Diesel growling, Luna perched menacingly above. The intruder froze, realizing they had underestimated the vigilance of those inside. Negotiation was brief but effective. Supplies were recovered, and the intruder was escorted outside with strict warning. Survival depended on cooperation, trust, and discipline. Observation and logic had turned potential disaster into a controlled outcome. The betrayal left its mark. Observation revealed heightened tension among remaining survivors. Trust was fragile, and vigilance had to increase. Logic dictated reinforced routines, stricter monitoring of newcomers, and pre-planned contingencies for internal threats. Diesel and Luna remained close, ever alert, as constant reminders that survival required both awareness and action. That night, I whispered the mantra aloud, steadying my mind. Adapt. Observe. Survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. Human betrayal was a harsh, emotional test, one that no amount of supplies or weapons could fully mitigate. Survival demanded discipline, foresight, and moral clarity in a world where desperation could turn allies into threats in an instant. Observation and logic weren't just tools, they were shields against both external and internal danger. The final stretch of winter tested everything I had learned: observation, logic, and discipline. Snowdrifts blocked streets, ice coated abandoned vehicles, and the warehouse became increasingly isolated. Supplies were critically low, and every decision carried life or death consequences. Diesel and Luna remained vigilant, their instincts more crucial than ever. Observation revealed new threats. Clusters of infected moved unusually fast in response to scent carried by the cold wind. Humans, desperate and armed, prowled the streets for food or shelter. Logic dictated rationing, layered defenses, and extreme caution on supply runs. Every step outside had to be calculated. Every second could mean survival or death. One supply mission brought me face to face with both threats simultaneously: a partially frozen street, several infected trapped in the drift, and a small human group attempting to ambush the same cache. Observation allowed me to anticipate the humans' tactics and the movement of infected. Logic dictated a diversion, using noise and light to split the threats, keeping us in control. Diesel's growl and Luna's hiss helped manipulate their attention while I collected supplies efficiently. Returning to the warehouse was treacherous. Observation guided me over thin ice, around collapsed structures, and through snow-laden streets where even the sound of movement could attract attention. Logic dictated patience, precision, and maintaining calm despite exhaustion. One wrong step could mean injury or exposure to infected. Inside, I reinforced barricades, organized dwindling supplies, and checked on Diesel and Luna. Observation revealed subtle signs of fatigue and stress, but logic dictated structured routines to preserve mental and physical resilience. Every task was deliberate. Survival depended on careful planning and disciplined execution. That night, I reflected on the journey from the first chaotic days of the outbreak to this frozen, dangerous city. Observation had guided every step, logic had preserved our lives, and discipline had maintained order in chaos. Diesel and Luna slept nearby, silent reminders of vigilance and loyalty. I whispered the mantra aloud, louder than ever, letting it resonate through the cold, empty warehouse. Adapt. Observe. Survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The final winter was a crucible, combining the harshest elements of human threat, infected, and nature. Survival wasn't a matter of luck. It was the culmination of observation, logic, and calculated action. Every decision, every movement, every second had mattered. And in a world overrun by chaos, we had endured. A full year had passed since the outbreak began. Observation, logic, and discipline had carried us through chaos, loss, and relentless danger. The city was a frozen ruin, streets littered with abandoned cars, toppled buildings, and the occasional groan of wandering infected. Humans were cautious, desperate, or hostile, but we had endured. Inside the warehouse, I reviewed supplies, noting what remained and what could last the coming months. Observation revealed patterns in both the city and its inhabitants. Infected clusters moved predictably, and human survivors adapted their behaviors according to need and desperation. Logic dictated preparation, adaptation, and continued vigilance. Diesel and Luna, older but still alert, rested beside me. Observation showed they too had survived the year, through instinct, training, and trust. Logic dictated that our partnership had been as essential as any barricade or weapon. Without them, survival would have been far less certain. I reflected on the losses, human lives lost to betrayal, infected attacks, or harsh conditions. Moments of panic and fear, the moral weight of decisions made in desperation. Observation and logic had guided me, but emotional resilience had kept me human. Each decision carried consequences, but each choice had also preserved life. The first year had taught me a simple truth. Survival was not just endurance, it was strategy, foresight, and adaptation. Every sound, shadow, and movement demanded attention. Every action required calculation. Diesel and Luna had been constant companions, reminders of loyalty, vigilance, and instinct. And I had learned to trust both my mind and my senses above all else. As I gazed out over the snow-covered city from the warehouse rooftop, I whispered the mantra one final time. Adapt, observe, survive. Every choice counts. Every second matters. The first year was over. We had survived humanity's collapse, the relentless undead, and a city that had become a frozen tomb. But survival was not an endpoint. It was ongoing, requiring constant observation, logic, and action. And as long as we remained vigilant, disciplined, and adaptive, there was hope, not just for life, but for the chance to endure and rebuild in a world forever changed.